Fernandes. And I'm Leon Fernandes. In a few minutes' time, we're going to be interviewing a South African architect who's changed many lives for the better with this powerful architecture. Please welcome Mokena Makeka! Hi Mokena, it's lovely to have you here on Rookie Reporter. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Chamonix. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So, taking you back to your early years, can you tell me a bit about your childhood? Like, where did you grow up and did you have any siblings?
Oh, well, I grew up in a number of places. It's such an interesting question. So I grew up in New York and I grew up in Maseru, which is a town in Lesotho. And I spent my university years in South Africa. So I pretty much grew up in three different places. I have a number of siblings. I have two younger brothers and an older sister.
Did you get on well with your siblings or did you squabble and fight with them sometimes?
Well, I'll tell you how it works in my culture, because that actually is a very, very good question. So I'm the eldest boy. So I'm supposed to be taking care of everybody else. So there really wasn't that much fighting because I was the one who always had to help sort out things. My two younger brothers would fight a lot, and I didn't really fight that much with my older sister, but I always had to help my parents to kind of be, I don't know, how can I describe it? Just be like the elder brother to everybody. So I didn't really fight much. I would have gotten in big trouble if I had fights.
Did you find that hard or did you sometimes feel like you were mad at someone but you couldn't fight because that was the way it worked?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I was a kid like anybody else, and sometimes you get sad or angry or frustrated. And yeah, there were times that I really, really, really got angry and I couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, like most small boys, or some small boys, if I should say, I did get into a couple of fights, but not so much with my siblings, but at school, which is not necessarily the good thing to do.
What were some of your hobbies growing up?
Oh, I love to draw. So I used to draw all the time, all the time. That was like my favorite thing. I used to draw comic books. I used to create cartoon characters. I draw cars. I draw planes. I draw sneakers. I used to make swings. I used to love going outside and making stuff. So, we got a lot of toys from my dad, but then what I would often do is go outside and just take a hammer and a nail and some rope, and I try to make my own sort of machines outside in the garden.
If you had to describe one experience during your childhood that helped build the foundation for your future career, what would it be?
That's a very, very good question. I'll tell you why it's a bit tricky to say what is the single experience, but I'll give you two, which I think are quite maybe interesting. So I think I was maybe 6 years old. Yeah, 5 or 6. And I really, really liked the Lamborghini Countach. It's this really, really beautiful car from the 1970s. And I was in art class and I decided to draw this car. But I drew it in what we would say 3D. So in other words, I didn't draw it just on the side. I draw it so that you could see almost all of it at the same time. And then when I finished the drawing, the teacher came up to me and said, "How did you do that?" And I was like, "What did you mean?" And then I heard the term 3D for the first time. The teacher said, "You drew it in 3D." Then I said, "I don't know what that means. That's just what it looks like to me." So apparently that was quite a big moment, because normally you have to teach somebody how to draw in 3D, and I just knew how to do it. So after that point, I realized, well, no, not at the time actually, After that point, I would always draw, and people really liked my drawings, and I do sketches. I even tried to sell them at school, try to make my own comic book, and people bought some. But I always really liked to draw. So that was like one experience. The second one, which I think is probably just as important for me, was when I was in high school and we had to do a play, or rather write about a play. And the playwright was a very, very famous playwright named Athol Fugard. And he had written a number of plays about South Africa's history. And I wrote an essay about his play. And one day we were in class, and the teacher said that we must all stand up. And I said, okay, cool. Why? And then the teacher brought out a letter written by Athol Fugard to me because he really liked my essay about his play. And it was amazing. And I didn't even know that my teacher sent my essay to the playwright. And Athol was so kind and said, I'm a wonderful writer. And I thought that was really, really cool. So it was between writing and drawing. And those are the two things that make me who I am today. I love to write and I love to draw.
That sounds so cool.
It felt very cool at the time. I must admit, it felt very cool. Yeah.
Brother and I really love to play Minecraft because we like a lot to design buildings and houses, which we can virtually live in. Have you played the game before?
I haven't played Minecraft before. I mean, I know about the game. I mean, it pops up on my phone. There's always these invites to come and participate. But from what I can tell, it's really, really cool. You get to make buildings, you get to make moats, you get to make machinery, you get to make like armies, you know, and you can actually like shoot and fight. I think it's really cool. Yeah.
All parents who find their kids playing Minecraft and think they don't approve of it, they need to watch this interview. It's good. It's a good.
I see. Did I fall into a strategy there, Chamonix? Okay.
If you didn't use Minecraft, do you use any technologies that are kind of like it in the sense that you can kind of put what you're designing on like a screen, like virtually tour it and plan it? You know?
Yes, we do, but it's not quite like Minecraft. So we have what's called CAD or CAD, which means computer aided drafting. So, and drafting is a way of drawing, and you can do it with a computer and you can do it by hand. I do a lot of drawing by hand, but when you're drawing on a computer from scratch, you can control everything. You can control how thick the walls are. You can control their color. You can control their texture. You can even move the sun into different points in the sky. So I can tell you what your place is going to be like on your birthday at 6:00 a.m. If I was doing a bedroom. I can actually show you how the sun would come into your room. I can even look at the weather and tell you why we need to make the fireplace on this side of the house as opposed to the other side of the house, just so that the house gets warm. So it's like Minecraft, but we have a lot much more to think about than just like moving some objects.
That sounds epic. Is there like a specific website?
It is totally epic.
Is that like a website? Because I would now be asking my dad if you can send the link.
Well, there isn't a website, but you know what you can do? You should, if you have the time, go and look up what's called SketchUp. And it's a free software, and you can just play with it. So you can actually download houses, you can download chairs, you can download cars, you can play with them. And when you get really, really good, you can change all of them. So it's a bit like Lego. First part is just to have a look at it and see what's out there. It's just fun for your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would really like that.
Yeah.
What books did you like as a child, and what did you learn from them?
Oh, well, because I liked, well, let me put it to you this way. I really like two types of books. So my dad had an Encyclopedia Britannica that he bought for the family, and this was before the internet. So this is like these books that had everything inside it. And he also bought science books. So I really look at that stuff and really look at drawings of anatomy and the skeleton and how cars work. You know, like what we call cutaway drawings. Like imagine cutting a car in two and showing what's inside it. So I like those type of books, but I really, really like fantasy books and movies and cartoons. So I was reading stuff like Lord of the Rings. I was reading books by, a bit of lots of fantasy. There's another one just in front of me here, a Lloyd Alexander. So anything that's like really amazing with like magic and fire and monsters and goblins and all of that stuff. Yeah.
That's actually a genre that I like too. But
Very cool.
when you said you like encyclopedias, I've got an encyclopedia right here. It's the World Book Encyclopedia.
Yeah, they can be, you know what? I used to read them for fun, but I was a bit of a nerd. So at school, they'd say, what did you do on the weekend? And I'd say, well, I picked up the book K, and I read the first 50 pages of all the things starting with K. And they'd be like, what is wrong with this child? So I don't understand, but I had fun because I like finding out new things.
I actually spend a lot of my time reading. A lot.
It's very cool. It's very, very cool. I mean, reading takes you to other places, other fantasies, other imaginations, other people. Inside books are all the secrets of the world.
Me and my brother are huge animal lovers, and we're really hoping to get a dog. Did you have any pets?
This is one of those trap questions. So I'm going to take my time with this one. No, no, I did. But it depended on where we stayed. So for example, when we were staying in Lesotho, which is, a country that is surrounded by South Africa, yeah, we had dogs. We always had dogs. So dogs are there for security. Dogs are there to be your friend. But in New York, I didn't have any dogs. Nope. No pets in New York because we were living in the city and it was just too complicated, right? So it depends on where you stay. So I can't answer the question about your dogs because it really depends on where you stay, who's going to feed it. When you guys are in class and mommy and daddy at work, who's going to take care of the dog? These are all the things you need to think about.
Do you have any, at least, top tips on how to convince parents to get their kids pets?
Well, the first thing you need to do, I would say, is maybe start with something basic like a fish. All right? If you have a fish in a fish tank and you feed the fish twice a day, and you can show your parents that you know when to feed the fish and that you can take care of a fish, then they might say, okay, maybe we'll see what you do with a bird. You do the same thing. And eventually you can graduate up to a dog. But you can't jump straight to a dog because it's a lot of responsibility unless somebody's going to help you take care of it. That's what I would say. So maybe convince them step by step.
Actually, we did have a fish, but it died when we were on holiday.
You see, exactly. See, a fish, you got to feed the fish every day. You got to make a plan. So
Yeah.
the whole point about a pet is they're very, very amazing friends to have. But you must remember two things about pets. They can't feed themselves and they can't clean up after themselves. If you can do those two things, then you're cool. But those are the two minimum: feeding, cleaning.
Okay, so moving on to your school and job kind of area, which teacher or teachers do you feel helped you most in life?
Well, the teacher who took my essay sent my essay rather, to Athol Fugard was probably one of the most influential teachers I ever had. Probably maybe number one. His name was Mr. Samuda. He actually got me a writing scholarship, but I decided to take an engineering scholarship. And then I had another teacher when I was studying architecture in first year, which was a very, very hard year for me. First year is always really tough. And one of my teachers came up to me and looked at my drawing, and all she said is, "I know you can do better." And it was absolutely inspiring. She gave me confidence, and for the next 6 years, I just always remembered her whenever I was drawing, that I can do better. So those were the two teachers who changed my life.
As a child, did you know you wanted to be an architect, or did it sort of just come into play?
I had no idea what an architect was when I was your age. You guys are very lucky. You get to be taught all these things. When I was your age, honestly, I didn't even know what jobs were out there. We were just told to study and read. And when I was in high school, I think I first heard the term architect when I was maybe 14 or 15, which is way older than you. And then I thought they only drew houses. And I was like, I don't want to draw houses. I want to do some other thing. I want to make machines. I want to make cars. And I thought that was what engineering was. So no, I mean, you're very lucky because you get to know these terms. When I was your age, I had no idea what an architect, even the word, I was like, what? An archi what? Oh, what? I had no idea. So I kind of fell into my profession. I didn't grow up knowing I want to be an architect.
In a way that's easy for kids to understand, can you tell me what the process of architecture is? Like some steps.
Well, it's very similar to how I said that you can use that software to think about making spaces. And that's actually what architecture is. We make spaces for people to do what they need to do. So we make spaces for you to sleep in. We make spaces for you to go to work in. We make spaces for cities to work. We make spaces for cars to move. We make spaces for you to make storage. And when we make these spaces, there's a lot that we have to think about. We have to think about security. We have to think about temperature. We also have to think about what it looks like. And some people think that's the only thing we think about. But what it looks like is like only this much. We have to think about this much and also what it looks like. So we have to think about the laws and the rules, where the electricity will go, how the door handle might work. We have to think about how comfortable the room is, how much light comes into it. Do we want to make a sad space or a happy space? If we're designing a religious building, it could be a mosque or a temple or a church. We have to think very differently. If I'm making a school for children your age, I have to design it very differently. So what we do basically is we design spaces. And that sounds strange because people look at what we do, they always look at it as an object, but it's actually the space that we're designing, and the object is around the space. So we're always designing spaces. That's what makes an architect.
That's useful information, actually.
Are you sure? Am I not getting too abstract, or you get it totally? You get it? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's nice. Yes. You know what I just told you? I actually have to explain to first-year architects who are twice your age, who also don't understand, and it takes 6 years to know how to design space. Yeah, it's actually very, very, very hard. It looks easy, but it took me 6 years to learn how to draw space.
Why did you want to be an architect?
You know what? I'm going to give you a confession here. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to become an architect, or why I became an architect, was there's certain types of people, some of whom are very good at math and very good at sciences, and they're very analytical. And then there are other people who are very artistic and very creative. And, and then you get these in-between people. And these in-between people aren't really comfortable. So I'm kind of like an artist, but I'm also like a scientist. And there are very few places where we feel comfortable because we use both sides of our brain at the same time, whereas other people tend to use one side of the brain more than the other. So in architecture, it's absolutely about art and beauty and light and color and excitement, but also how heavy is it? How does it stand up? When the wind blows, will it stay strong? When you're talking to engineers who do all of their calculations, we talk to them. How much does it cost? So on the one hand, a lot of it is very, very much scientific and mathematical, and on the other hand is very artistic. So with architecture, I found a place where I could use both sides of my brain. Because when I was studying engineering, it didn't feel artistic. And when I was doing art, I was like, come on, let's get serious. So I needed something in between. That's what makes architecture slightly different to some other courses that you can do. You have to use both sides of your brain at the same time.
I feel like very few jobs can do that. Yeah.
There are a few. There are a few. Yeah. So some of you could say architecture. You could say if you're a surgeon, which is, surgeons have a very artistic way, but they're also very much scientists. But they have to, when they're operating and working on the body, a lot of it is also intuition and feeling. So there is a degree of artistry there. Product designers also. So if somebody's like designing a cup or a chair or a car, it has to be very beautiful, but at the same time, it also has to be very practical. So there are places where you could find where these two sides of our minds are able to come together. A director of a movie is also quite cool because directors have the same challenge. So they're making a movie, they're filming, it's very, very artistic, but also it's very, very, very analytical. To the time, there's equipment, there's technology. So that's also very similar. So being an architect and being a director is actually quite similar.
What would you be if you weren't an architect?
If I wasn't an architect, wow. I would have definitely, I think I would be a writer. I'd be a writer. I'd write my little monster stories and stories for kids and so on, just to scare you guys and have some fun. Definitely. And if I wasn't doing that, I would also be a musician. I used to do hip hop for many, many years. And it was, I had a record deal and I performed. And if I didn't, it was actually my second choice. I would have probably been a musician. So, but music and writing are quite similar. They're very similar. They actually almost do the same thing.
What's your absolute favorite thing about being an architect?
You know what it is? Here's the coolest thing, right? You know what our homework is? Just walking around and looking. So it's so fun. So when I go to a new city, everybody's just going around and shopping. To me, I'm learning stuff. So if I'm in Japan and I'm walking in the streets and I see their buildings, I'm actually learning. So in architecture, it's very fun because all you're doing is you learn and you see and you learn and you see. So everywhere I go, I'm learning. So basically what I see is my teacher, So you understand architecture through books, but after a while, I can watch a movie and I can be inspired to do architecture. I could be watching an anime cartoon. I can watch Minecraft and I can think about architecture. So the coolest thing is that architecture, because it's all around us, means that I'm always learning. And that's really, really, really fun. I don't have to go to a book to find out more about architecture. I just have to pay attention.
What qualities do you think all architects need?
This is a tough one. This is a tough one, Chamonix. I knew you were going to throw a curveball at me. I knew you were going to do that. Okay. First quality, you have to be very, very curious. Do you know about Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah.
Have you heard about Sherlock? Yeah. So that's kind of like what an architect does. people look at things and architects see other things. Like you can look at something and Sherlock Holmes will tell you something and you'll be like, how did you know that? Like, but can't you see it? So you have to be very observant, a bit like a detective, and you have to understand what's happening around you. Other thing that you have to do is you have to be, how can I call it? You have to, it's actually, you have to have a bit of fun in you, you know? Boring architects make boring buildings, you know, and they make terrible spaces which are sad and frustrating. So you got to be a little bit artistic, a little bit more interesting, and you have to have a big, big heart. This is quite an important thing because if you don't have a heart when you're designing for people, you're going to create places which can hurt them and which are not good for them. So you have to have a big heart. You have to be very generous. You have to be very loving. And when you design and you draw things for people, all that love comes out and you make spaces that make people happy.
That sounds fun. From all the structures and buildings that you've created, which one's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite building is one that I did in an area called Kaya Licha, which is what we call an informal settlement. And an informal settlement is a place where there isn't electricity, there isn't water, there isn't storage. It's a very, very sad part of the town where people haven't really lived well. But I made a very, very cool building that made the local people happy, that gave them a sense of pride, that made them very proud. And that helped me to feel way, way, way much better because I knew I was doing something that was making people happy. Ultimately, I like to make people happy. That's what excites me about architecture.
What is the first thing that you've ever designed or built before?
Wow, that's an interesting question. In architecture or in general?
In architecture.
No, just double checking because I didn't have Minecraft when I was young. I had Lego. So I made lots of things with Lego. I mean, that's my universe.
I've got
Um,
a bit of Lego.
yeah. It's really good. You must play it more than Minecraft, by the way. Like seriously, like more.
Well, like you know,
No,
it's not like I've got a problem with it, but Minecraft's
no,
like,
I know. No, so what my first building actually was a police station.
oh,
I designed a police station at a train station, which was also made quite complicated. But that was my first job.
me and my brother are in like kind of currently trying to build a train station with Lego.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll see if I can send you two videos of the stations that I've done. I'll send your daddy a link onto YouTube. And I designed a station for the future where the trains go underground. Yeah, cool stuff.
That would be amazing. What is the most challenging project you've worked on?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you for the question, Leon. You're making me think. So I've had a number of challenging projects, but I think the most challenging one, the toughest one, I had to design a train station in the year 2010, which is almost 10 years ago, but I had to design it for the year 2030, which is 10 years from now. So I had to imagine what the city would be like 20 years into the future and make a design that would work out not only for the year 2030, but would work until the year 2060. So
Cool.
cool. So it was like Wakanda. I had to like imagine the future, but without the money. So it was like really interesting. Like, how do we make cities for the future? Yeah, that was my hardest job.
What materials did you use? How did you choose them?
Wow. Well, there are so many materials that we use in architecture. I mean, if I say there are thousands, I mean it. So if we think of tiles that you walk on, you get granite, you get sandstone, you get terrazzo, you get concrete. So there's a whole range of materials that I would use on the ground. I tend to like maybe like porcelain tiles. Those are actually quite cool and hard and they're very, very nice. I do like wood because wood is sustainable and it's warm and it makes people feel very, very welcome. So I use a lot of wood in my designs. And I also like steel because we can do a lot with steel. You can make interesting big shapes and so on. But even if I mention those three materials to you, like stone and wood and maybe brick, which I also sometimes use, there are so many other materials that we have to use, sometimes for insulation, sometimes for the paint, sometimes for door handles. There's so many things that we use. It's quite a wide number of choices that we have out of there.
I like marble flooring. I just like
Yeah, many people like marble. Marble is very, you're quite a classy fellow. I can tell. Yeah, marble suits you.
What is the strongest material you've used and why?
Wow, I think the strongest material I've used, I would say, would be, well, strong is interesting. I'll tell you why it's an interesting question that you're raising. Something can be strong but very heavy, and something can be strong and very light. So, for example, steel, which is how we normally hold up roofs and structures, it's very, 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 very strong, but it's pretty light. But if you have concrete, which are like these columns that hold up buildings, I'm sure you've seen columns that hold up, yeah? Normally that's made out of concrete. They are strong, but they're very, very heavy. So sometimes I have to make a decision. Do I want a heavy structure or do I want a light structure? So if I'm holding up a floor, a heavy structure is fine. So I'll use concrete. But if I'm holding up a roof, sometimes it's better for it to be steel because it's lighter. So it's kind of between those two choices. But I would say if I had to choose, I'd say steel. Steel is very hard. Yeah, I choose steel. Which one do you like?
I like graphene.
Oh, graphene.
Yeah.
Graphene's also very cool, but we can't use graphene in architecture. It's just so expensive. It's such an amazing material. It's strong, it's light, it's fun. But graphene tends to be used more in what we would call aerospace, which is basically, how could I describe that to you? Like planes and really, really high performance designs that do really, really incredible things. But graphene is absolutely amazing. Maybe one day we'll use it in architecture, but people can't afford to use graphene in their buildings.
Do architects design the interior as well as the exterior? Or...
Yes, we do. We do. However, sometimes the client wants somebody else to do the interior, but almost all architects, we are trained to do the inside and the outside and the structure. And many, many, many architects will do all at one go, and you don't need somebody else to come in. But sometimes the client likes somebody else to come in, and on those projects, you might find somebody else comes in. And sometimes those people are also architects, but they might call themselves interior designers, but they're trained as architects also.
That I see now. Does interior design include like the furniture and the paintings and like the materials and everything?
Yes, definitely, definitely, definitely. So, for example, um, I also do interior design. I understand what the client wants. I can make recommendations of art and paintings and carpets and curtains and cushions and sofas and colors. I can even tell them what type of knives and forks they should have in the kitchen to go with the house, and even recommend what type of fridges they should use. But sometimes, yeah, you can, especially if I'm doing a hotel, we do everything right down to the kettle. You can even say, well, we don't like this kettle. We want this type of kettle. We want this type of pot. If you're doing a restaurant, you do everything. But sometimes what will happen is, as I said, sometimes somebody else who can do that. And it's absolutely fine. It really depends on what is the best thing for that project. I've even designed uniforms for the staff working in buildings. Yeah, because you look at the building, it's a public building, and you've designed everything. You design the tablecloths, you design the logo, and then you have to design the uniform so that the people working in the building look like they belong in the building. An architect can also do that.
That is down to a lot of detail.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that architects think much, much more than what it just looks like. We do quite a lot, or we can do quite a lot. Yeah.
Who is your idol? Who inspires you?
Wow. What a tough question. What a tough question. What in okay. I mean, Shaman, you're just so good at this. You're always putting me in corners. You're such a good journalist. Um, I think I'm inspired by a lot of musicians, to be honest with you. I'm inspired by a lot of writers um, from the past. But if I was to think today architecturally, there's one really, really cool architect. His name is Tom Main or Thomas Main, and he has a company called Morphosis, and their work is always just amazing, like just yummy. Like I look at his buildings and I want to lick them, like the ice cream. But architects are like that. We find buildings delicious, not to eat, but we just like them so much. And when a building's like really really cool, we just love them. You know. Yeah.
That sounds like a really good company. I'm gonna search it up.
They must. They're very good. They're very talented.
So I've seen research about your Tower of Light building. Can you tell me a
Yes.
bit about it? Like the idea behind it?
Well, it's a very very good point. So that you raised there. Do you know about Nelson Mandela?
Yeah, we're actually learning about it in school right now.
Yeah. So Nelson Mandela helped to free South Africa, but his story was much more important than South Africa. His story was really about all people in the world who are oppressed, and he obviously had a big focus on the people of South Africa and what we would say Black people in particular, who in South Africa had been oppressed for a very long time, but also globally, as we understand it, there are lots of challenges facing Black people due to the history of the world. So he spent 27 years in prison, various different types of prisons, but let's say 27 years. So there was a competition that was put out to do a memorial, or actually rather a statue for him. And I decided we're not going to do a statue, we're going to make a tower for Nelson Mandela. We're going to make an amazing structure. And what I'm going to do is take the 27 years that he was in prison for and make 27 floor tall structure. So he had a book called The Long Walk to Freedom. And he spoke about how freedom is about walking. So I then decided the way to do this is for people to walk up 27 floors. So you're almost walking his journey. And then you get to the top to a room. And in that room, you get to see the whole city, named after him, by the way, Nelson Mandela Bay. And you get to go inside a cell, a prison cell, where he's sitting inside there, and you can take a selfie with him. And then you take an elevator down. And the whole idea is that when you take that journey, you understand in a little bit of a way what it means to take a walk that is more important for other people than it is for you. And that you take a journey and you understand sacrifice, and that you also understand what he did for all of us, not just South Africans, but actually all of us.
The world.
Yeah, the world, indeed. He belongs to the world.
I've seen that you've been involved in the redevelopment of some school. Can you tell me how you feel this impacts children's lives for the better, especially those from slightly more disadvantaged backgrounds?
Well, schools are very, very important because it's where you form not only your friends and where you gain knowledge from your teachers, but it's where you form your character. It's where you learn what's fair. It's where you learn what's just. It's where you learn how to care for other people, but it's also where you learn where you can find yourself. And the importance of a school for disadvantaged children is that very often children who have disadvantages don't have enough support structures at home for them to have fun, for them to find themselves, for them to learn all of these sorts of things that can make them amazing human beings. And sometimes the environments that they live in actually take them away from reaching their full potential. So when I design these schools, as a designer, I'm not the teacher. So the teacher still has a huge impact on the kids as well as what they're actually being taught. But what I can do is I can make spaces that make the children feel safe, spaces that make the children feel like they can have fun, spaces that can make the children feel like they belong and they're part of a community. And I can make spaces in such a way that the kids can feel that they can make a contribution to society when they get older. In other words, spaces that inspire kids to become bigger than just kids, but to become like amazing, amazing, amazing people. And that's what I try and do with these spaces, is to try and make, you notice I describe it as spaces, right? Remember I said architecture is about space? So I try and make spaces that inspire children, but also inspire the teachers to want to be better teachers. Because the teachers are also important. And if the teachers don't feel good, then they're going to be bad teachers. And if there's bad teachers, we're going to have bad kids. So the teachers must also feel happy to be in the space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do to relax after a tiring day?
Oh, wow. What a lovely question. So I enjoy movies. I love reading. I love reading. And you know what? Come to the camera. Come. I'm writing a book. Actually, 2 books. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell it. Shh. So that's what I like to do. I like to create when I'm having, that's my way of relaxing. Yeah.
I'm in the way of writing a book. That's just for fun.
That's beautiful. I think that's amazing. You must do it. What's it about? Tell me.
It's kind of like Harry Potter. Like it's like about wizards and witches and school.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Do you have
So what happens?
what happens? I don't know, I'm kind of making it up as I go along.
You know what you need to do to really make it really fun? You must introduce something that you've never thought of before. So I'm going to give you an idea. Yeah. When you're writing it, one of the characters has to find the green unicorn in order to find happiness. And you can decide, yeah?
They could have to find a slimy giant sea cucumber.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. And then you have to say, okay, what are you going to do with the cucumber? And once they find it, that's your story. I think that's a cool story. You actually can call it the slimy green cucumber. That's a cool story. I want to read it.
Do you have any advice for young architects or designers of the future?
Oh, okay. This is a very, very, very deep statement I'm going to make. I hope you play this recording many, many years from now when you're older, because you'll understand it in different ways over the times. We are now at a time when human beings are hurting the planet because there's so many of us and we keep making a lot of waste and not taking care of it and not taking care of animals, that we're slowly killing the planet. I think architects and designers of the future should try and make sure that our cities help the planet become better and healthier places to be. So my message is design for the planet and people. Don't just design for people. That's what I would say.
That's a very inspirational message. So,
I hope it inspires you. It came from you. You spoke about this huge green cucumber. So I thought about the planet. Yeah.
Did you design the astronaut suit for NASA?
Me? No, I didn't. I wish I did. It would be so cool. But I used to draw space shuttles when I was young because I think the space shuttle is a really, really cool plane. Like it's really, really beautiful.
Thank
Yeah.
you. This is another question that I think Leon might like. Do you know anyone who's designed anything for NASA? Or...
Actually, yes, I do. I do.
Leon,
I have a friend who's an architect, believe it or not, who works with NASA, and he was helping to design the imaginary space stations for Mars. And he got to tell the NASA astronauts, if we're going to do architecture on Mars, this is what it's going to be like. Now, isn't that cool? That shows you that architecture, you can do anything.
Leon,
So yeah, so sorry?
He really wants to do an interview with someone. Can you to let us interview him?
I'll have to find him. I haven't spoken to him for years, but I think he would love that because I know that he was doing architecture for Mars. And there's lots of cool stuff around that.
Okay, so since I'm not sure if this is going to be in or out, but let's get back to the inspirational words. So we're actually going to end it there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for taking time to join us here, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. I loved the interview. Loved you and, just everybody there. Mom, Dad, Leon, all good. So you guys take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon.
I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Please subscribe to our channel and like the video. Dun, 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 dun.